basically we want to understand the state of water quality and the extent of the overlap with the drainage and stormwater efforts by the city.
Yes, I, yeah, that's true.
I mean, sorry.
Come to order, please.
We need it.
This is the meeting of the Isle Palms Environmental Advisory Committee on Thursday, January 13th, 2022 at 4:30 p.m. The public has been duly notified of the meeting in accordance with the Freedom of Information Act as well as the press. So first on the agenda, we want to approve the previous meeting's minutes from November 18th, 2021. Does anyone have any additions or corrections to the minutes?
Yes, I do. Just the spelling of my last name, it's Hatler, not Hal. This is Doug Hatler.
Gotcha, thank you. All
Yep.
right. All right. Anything else? Is there a motion?
So moved.
Okay. So Linda, I can't see your mouth. Did you make the motion?
So moved.
Okay, thank you. I didn't know who it came from. All right, and there was a second. Now, do we have to do a voice vote on that? All of us?
Say all in favor. Who seconded this?
Yes, you second.
I'll
Is it Sandy?
Okay, thank you.
All right,
All in favor. All in favor.
all in favor?
Aye.
All right, so the minutes are approved as amended.
Progress.
I also want to welcome John Bogosian to his first meeting since being installed on city council. He is our new liaison. So thank you for coming, John. We're so glad to have you.
Thank you. I look forward to meeting you all and working with you on this very worthwhile committee.
Thank you. All right. Citizens' comments. I don't think we have any citizens' comments. It has been suggested that we amend the agenda to let Dr. Stewart do his program first, so he won't have to sit through all our business. I know you're glad to hear that. And so is there a motion? to that
So
effect?
moved.
I second that.
Okay, Linda Plunkett has made a motion that we amend the agenda in order to have Dr. Stuart Weinberg first after citizens' comments. So that has been motioned and seconded, and I don't think we have to discuss that. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. So we will proceed with that. Welcome, Dr. Stuart Weinberg. Belvin Olasov would like to introduce you, if that's okay.
Yeah, so Dr. Stuart Weinberg was intimately involved in the development of Charleston's climate action plan, both from setting up the software that measures the carbon emissions that the city uses as a baseline, to putting together all the committees and meeting with all of them and helping develop the plan ultimately. It's my hope that he can potentially help us translate the plan and will be explaining the plan to us today.
Thank you, Bill. So a little bit about me.
I'm sorry, before you begin, if you don't mind standing by the podium, that way we can ensure that the audio picks up your voice for our
Gotcha.
recording.
Gotcha.
Here, I'll
Do I
bring this.
need to move the podium then, or?
No, you can.
Okay, that's fine. I'm good. I'm good.
You want me to-
No, this is fine. No, not yet, not yet. Okay. Otherwise, they're gonna read it and they won't pay attention to me. Just a little bit about me, so you understand. I'm a former school superintendent, but not here in South Carolina. And when I came down here permanently in 2012, within a year, I became involved in climate and learning about climate change, global warming, and all that. And when I first went to my first meeting, and we had to put on the wall, "Why are you here?" And I wrote, "I have 3 grandchildren." And from that moment on, I became very much involved in the city of Charleston, working eventually with Mayor Tecklenburg, and sort of felt that I could serve as his climate coach. And of course, this is all volunteer. As a retired individual, it's a way of giving back to the community. Probably the highlight was in 2018. I was the South Carolinian who went to the Global Climate Summit in San Francisco. In fact, I was leaving and Florence was coming. We had ended up boarding up our house because Florence was actually coming here. That's the hurricane. And we went, and obviously Florence didn't come here, went upstate. But I went to every session that I could on cities and city plans on climate change. And what I saw, one after another, the ones that were failing were the cities that came up with these great plans. They looked good, they were marvelous, they were glossy, they were beautiful, but there was no funding, there was no commitment, and they were not real. So one of the things in the conversations with Mayor Tecklenburg and eventually with Katie McCain, who's the Director of Sustainability for the City of Charleston, was that anything we do, and this is probably key before I even start a presentation, whatever you do, you need to ask yourself, can you do it? So do you have the power to be able to make the changes? So there's one thing in our plan which we don't have the power, but we are suggesting to use our bully pulpit to try to convince the port to electrify the port. Because now, even right now, this past weekend, you have a ship in there, and what's that ship doing while it's sitting there? It's belching diesel fumes into the air for as long as it's there. So we can't force the port to electrify, but we need to use our bully pulpit to do that. So what we've done is we have a plan, and what I'm going to go through is, I'm not going to go through the specifics of the plan. I'm going to go through the steps. Just do 2 minutes on global warming so that we're all on the same wavelength. And feel free to interrupt me at any time. All right, please. Okay, so we're going to talk about the impacts of climate change in Charleston. I can't talk about the Isle of Palms, but I think some of it is very relevant, especially those people that live on the Isle of Palms that might need to take the roads to the city of Charleston and what you can do to help. So just as a quick review, our planet is warming. We all know that the sun comes through the atmosphere. And if you've never noticed or know how thin the atmosphere is, can you think of an old globe that you might have had in the house in school? The veneer on the globe, just the thickness of that veneer, how thin it is compared to the rest of the globe. That's the best way to describe the atmosphere in relationship to the size of the Earth. So it comes in, solar radiation heats us. Obviously, we need that, otherwise we'd all be freezing. Some energy is radiated back into space by the Earth in form of infrared waves. Some of the outgoing infrared radiation is trapped by the Earth's atmosphere and keeps us warm. But what's been happening is that as this blanket thickens, because of the increase in CO2, methane, nitric oxide, and other greenhouse gases, it becomes thicker and thicker, and more of that heat is retained and retained. And that's what's creating a situation where it's warming. And one of the things that we all know is that over 90% of that additional warmth goes into the oceans. We'll talk about that in a second, but it goes into the oceans. And that whole warming of the oceans, especially the Gulf Stream, everything we've seen in the Gulf of in the Caribbean and the Gulf of Mexico, creates a great situation for hurricanes. So this is Jay Inslee, and it makes so much sense. We are the first generation to feel the sting of climate change, and we are the last generation that can do something about it. I'll give you a little bit of analogy. If you walked into a restaurant anywhere and someone lit up a cigarette, what would you do? You'd go over and probably say something to the person, or you'd say something to the manager. Do you know how long it took that to happen? Some of us, I could see, but yeah, 40 years from getting past all of those lies about how good tobacco is for you, how romantic it is, how sexy it is, etc. It took 40 years to get past that to get to where we are now with no smoking. We're not even halfway through those 40 years. So, but we are moving probably at a quicker pace. We know the global impacts, whether it be smoke from Australia's 2020 fires, the monsoon rains in Bihar, super monsoons, all the hurricanes that occurred this year, whether it be Ida or any of them that happened across Oregon, more than 2,300 homes that were burned last year. But this is probably key. If you take a look at extreme weather catastrophes from the early 20th century to 2020, you can see the increase. So this is a fact. So when people argue with me, does climate change occur, or even if you have that, I wouldn't argue with a denier. I would just say, just look at some of the facts that are happening. So if you take the global impacts, I don't know how well you can see that, but the blue line would be without any greenhouse gas emissions. This is the red line. I talked a few minutes ago about the amount of heat that goes into the oceans. What happens when something gets heated? It expands. So if you take the expansion of the water molecules, that's number one. And I don't have time today, but if I went through a presentation on what's happening in Greenland and Antarctica with the amount of ice, land ice that's melting, it's important it's land ice. Because remember, if you have a glass of water, ice water, and it's filled up to here, even when all the ice melts, it's still going to be up to there. So it's got to be all of that additional land ice that's melting. So you take that along with the expansion, you get the sea level rise, which is measured in Charleston Harbor 1 foot in the last 100 years. That doesn't sound like much, but over 6 inches of that is in the last 20 years. Keep that in mind. We all know the inaccessibility due to flooding from large storms, rain bombs, and just a little video. I might not have the sound, but we don't need the sound. It's about 1.5 minutes. And if I'm correct, Hugo hit here even more so. Correct? You didn't have a 9-foot surge. I think Sullivan's Island had a 12-foot surge.
Foley's Island.
What?
I think it cut Foley's Island. in
Half.
half.
Oh, yeah. Well, just look at what would happen today if the same tide came through at high tide. That's Hugo. Can you see that over there? All right. So I always have some slides that I just need to get past just in case the video doesn't work. So we have an action plan. What we did first, as Belvin said, we did a greenhouse gas emissions study, which means we got all the information from Dominion, Berkeley Electric for us. We got water usage. We got transportation usage, which is really from the COG, which was really good transportation issues. So we were able to look and actually come up with how much metric tons of CO2 were being emitted into the air from us in Charleston. And we used that as the basis for where we want to go for the future. And you could do that here. We joined ICLEI, which is an international organization of cities dealing with sustainability. There is a cost, it's $1,700 a year. I don't think it's gone up. But what's great about ICLEI is that it gives you all the algorithms. So you're not taking an Excel worksheet and you're manipulating that by hand to figure out how you take 100,000 kilowatts of electricity and transform that into how much carbon dioxide is being emitted. So that's really worth a lot of effort and time. We took our information and we put it into 5 categories, actually 4 categories, the 5th category being an educational committee, but buildings, transportation, waste, and carbon sinks. And carbon sinks is the sequestration of carbon. So how can we get rid of some of the carbon dioxide? And Belvin will tell you, because I think I'm quoting him, the most important invention ever made on the planet Earth is called a tree. Thank you, Belvin. So we have a 5-year action plan. And the reason it's a 5-year action plan is because things are changing so much that for us to come up with a 10-year action plan without looking at it in 5 years is really doesn't make sense. We look at the latest science, we look at industry standards, we align with city other plans. We need to also know what Dominion is doing and how many coal power plants it's closing. Is it replacing them with solar farms? No, not really. Right now, their goal is to have more natural gas. which is 50% of the coal, but it's still a lot of greenhouse gas emissions. And in emphasizing the importance of ongoing equitable community engagement. We know that even in the city of Charleston, the greatest areas of greenhouse gas emissions are in the areas of poverty within the city. I mentioned the cruise ships. Where's all that pollution going? Right to the east side of the peninsula. We also looked at social equity, not only here in Charleston, but everywhere else. You find that most children with asthma are in areas that are around coal power plants in the state and are people of color and are poverty. We did all this during COVID. We had a community meeting. We had over 1,000 people participate in a number of different committees. We had 150 individuals who were on a Zoom meeting at least once a week for 9 weeks, really developing the plan. And the Zoom meeting was planned for 90 minutes and usually went 120 minutes because people were very much involved. We also had a really diverse group of people throughout the community. We had architects, we had engineers, but probably most important, we had members of the city council because we learned the lesson, even though I wasn't here in 2010. In 2007, Mayor Riley established the Green Committee. If you go and Google Charleston's Green Plan, which was presented to the City Council in 2010, it looks beautiful. It's colorful, it's glossy, it really is. So what happened in 2010? 2010, because I bought my condo in 2010, even though I moved down here to 2012, you had the lowest real estate values you've had probably the last 25 years. You also had some political things going on where you didn't want people saying, don't tell me what to do with my property, don't tell me how to run my life. So they presented it to the city council, it went nowhere. And part of that is that there was no city council members that were on any of the green committees to begin with. So we felt it was very important to, and it's really for you to make sure that you have representation from the city council if you're going ahead with any plan, because they need to approve it. And just to present a plan to them at the end, even with slides and everything, they need to own it. They need to be able to be part of those conversations. So I really recommend that. We had 51 action items. I'm not going to go through all the 51 action items, but I'm going to bring up one group in a minute. Buildings was 25%, transportation 33%, waste 20%, and carbon sinks, again, sequestration is 22%. For every action item, we did a co-benefit. It wasn't just, hey, it's a good idea. We looked at each one of these. I'm going to read them, even though I know you can read. Is there a cost savings? Yes or no? Does it improve mobility, especially in transportation? The use of CARTA, the use of more electric charging stations. Does it improve public health or air quality? Does it improve the ecosystem and our water quality? Does it do anything with safety? And especially with transportation, even in buildings. How about economic development and retention? So anything we do, is it jeopardizing? Are we going to hear from the tourist groups that that's really hurting our economic development? You need to take that into consideration as you're making decisions. Does it enhance climate adaptation, historic preservation, cultural preservation, raise awareness and role model beautification? So right now in the state of South Carolina, the city of Charleston is the only city or municipality that has a plan. About the end of October, we hosted a forum with people from Spartanburg and from Greenville. They are getting the plan yet, but they're going to every one of their, especially in Greenville, they wear green shirts and go to every single of their city council meetings. They're talking about the pieces of a plan. So eventually they might be getting a plan. I also belong to the Conservation Coalition, which is a group of about 45 different organizations in the state. And although we have presented that we want a state climate plan, we're not sure we're going to get the legislators to do that. So we feel that if we could do this from the ground up, it's really going to serve a purpose. So under Belvin's guidance, the Town of James Island last year passed a resolution. They haven't done anything with it yet. They passed a resolution talking about what they want to do. The County of Charleston recently hired a sustainability officer, someone who had, I think, 5 years experience at EPA in Washington, DC. She's now working on conducting a greenhouse gas emissions survey for the entire county of Charleston. Her difficulty is in working on a plan. What can the county do where it doesn't have jurisdiction over some of the municipalities, but it has all this other area that's unincorporated. So that's a real challenge for them. Our global emissions reduce 56% by 2030, and the international committee, that's their recommendation in order for us to ever get to zero emissions in 2050. So going back to parts of the plan, the city council created a resilience and sustainability advisory committee. I'm the community member of that committee. It's comprised of members of the industry, education, and also includes a couple of city council members. We meet 4 times a year, but they're the ones who actually created the Climate Action Task Force, created the 5 subcommittees. We had a climate action task force, and then it kept going back and forth until it went to the city council. So I thought I'd just share some of the very few of the action plans. So one of the ones on the building is to support efforts to strengthen the energy code at the state level, because you guys don't have the authority to change the energy codes. The state is the one that has that authority. We're using energy codes from 2009. You think things have changed since 2009? So that is one of the things that we're really working on. We want to support state efforts and explore local equitable gap funding opportunities for energy efficiency in new construction, because there are so many new possibilities in using, what's that one material?
Hempcrete?
Yeah. Which people can't use or don't have the flexibility to use. So, increase staff capacity and funding to conduct a facilities assessment plan and continue improving energy efficiency of the existing city buildings. So I don't know how many structures you have here that you're under your control in Isle of Palms, but what have you done? Can you move from these fluorescent lights to LEDs? How much that would save you? And probably, I don't know if you know, but and I don't know if you've ever done an energy audit for the city of Isle of Palms. If you do, we've done it so often in Charleston. I did it as a superintendent, in my school districts, because you find that you can make the improvements and the savings that you're going to incur because of the reduction in energy costs will pay for that change. So that's something to keep in mind. Okay, I'm going back to the PowerPoint. I'm not going to keep you much longer. Nobody has any questions yet? Okay. Fine. We said we cannot do this without everyone's help. So now, if it goes down. So the last page of the climate action plan is this. It's interactive. Every place that you see a blue or an orange, if you actually went to the page, you actually can click on that and get some assistance. On the back side of the handout is the website for the Charleston's Climate Action Plan. Also, my contact information if you really want to talk to me. We also have, when we do this presentation in Charleston, we ask people to click on that and actually make a pledge. But if you take a look at the chart, what can you do? So just look at this for a minute. And maybe, even though you don't have a plan, take this home, put it on the refrigerator, and put a check next to what something you can do tomorrow that's going to decrease greenhouse gas emissions. Just for a minute. Has anyone here ever had, are you all Dominion? Have you had Dominion do, anybody do an energy audit of their home? Okay, and I would, you know, it's free. The only thing they're going to come back and tell you is, hey, you could save lots of money. Georgetown, Texas, not Georgetown, South Carolina, a red city in a red state is 100% renewable. Why? Talk to the mayor, he says, I'm saving my taxpayers' money. 100% renewable. And as they rebuild some homes and communities that have been devastated by floods and hurricanes, they're finding that if they go to renewable energy, how much they're going to save. So view the checklist, see what you can do. We talk about protecting air, water, and carbon. Planting trees would be the best thing that we could possibly do. We actually have a program in Charleston called Charleston's Street Tree Program. Reduce your waste. We're actually starting, and it's something you can actually do. We have a grant, we're doing it, and the county's doing it, a compost program. We're actually having a program next Saturday, the 22nd, and I believe Tuesday, the 25th. It's on the website on the Charleston, where we're distributing and explaining how you can do your own compost. So for example, I live in a condominium, so I'm not going to be able to convince the condominium to have a compost bin, but there's a compost bin. My wife's a potter right near where she goes and plays with clay, right there. So we're going to pick a bin up and we're going to make sure that we're doing that. Why? Because when you take your food waste and you let it go through composting, you're reducing the decomposition. But if we send all that stuff to bees, ferret, landfill there, you're finding that that's producing a tremendous amount of methane gas. So you could, as a community, you could do something like just having a compost program. And I think if you're interested in something like that, we could probably find out, because we know we got a grant to do this for this year. We have the restaurants doing a compost program. This is one of the Mayor Tecklenburg's favorite thing, adopt a drain. I think if we can get rid of all the landscapers that are blowing more of that stuff into our drains, it would be better. We actually passed a resolution that within a year, all city blowers will be electric, will no longer be gasoline. That's something that we know we could do and we should do. And one of those blowers produce more greenhouse gas emissions than if you took your car here and drove from here down to the peninsula. So just to give you an idea, it's amazing. This is a program which you could also look at, Charleston Rainproof, which really talks about, can you take the water that's coming off your roof and use it in your garden so it's not going into a flooding area. It's no longer Holy Spokes, it's going to be Lime bikes after next month. But do you have bike sharing here on the place? No. I mean, just to give you an idea of some things that you could possibly do. Walk, ride a bike, use public transportation. Carter just is getting 6 electric buses, so that's going to reduce the pollution. We're trying to find maybe some electric car company that would love to donate some electric cars, but we'll see. Energy efficient light bulbs. I think if you don't know, and if you haven't gotten them for your own home, Dominion has their little store where you could buy, I think, 15, 60 equivalent 60-watt LED bulbs for your home for $5. And you remember that less than 6 or 7 years ago, it was $5 for one bulb. So we're really doing a lot. But please, for yourself, consider doing an energy audit. Sustain your lifestyle. I don't know if you know, but most of the methane that comes from a cow comes from the mouth. And so if there's any way we could reduce the meat, can you look at buying less, renewing more, replacing more, instead of just buying and buying? There's a whole thing in the clothing industry with throwaway fashion. And that throwaway fashion has created, I want to move along a minute, has created, I'm going to go back to it. It takes 20,000 liters of water to produce that shirt and that pair of pants. And if it's something that you're throwing away more and more, look at the amount of energy that you're using. So it really could be more sustainable. I know that you can't read this chart, but hey, I love my meat. I don't deny that, but can we make sure that we're not eating it as much as we maybe ate it in the past? And maybe the community can get together and come up with ideas like that. Again, eat more plant-based diet here, eat more fish, shrimp. Again, you can go back to the sheet, free recipes online. And probably the greatest thing is it doesn't take big steps, it takes little steps. By taking little steps together, we're going to be able to make a difference. When you hear that people say, well, if I do something, is it really going to make a difference? No, but not by yourself, but collectively, it really will make a difference. We reduced greenhouse gas emissions from the first survey that was done in 2002 to the one that was done for 2018 by 15%. Did we do anything? No, probably not. A couple things happened. People are replacing old appliances with energy saving appliances. Individuals are now building and buying homes that are better insulated. I'd love to see that everyone come up with a requirement. You can't build a home on the Isle of Palms or in the city of Charleston unless you put solar panels on the roof. But I don't know if that will ever happen. But think of the things that you could possibly do and set an example. So if you came in, that's my Tesla. I have solar panels. I've insulated my attic with foam insulation because I think I need to set an example. But in the long run, I'm saving dollars, and you can too. So I'm here for any questions. It really thoughts. Do you want to do something as a community? That's number one. Do you think it's your responsibility? I'll tell you it is, but that's not my decision to make. That's your decision to make. Is it your responsibility to do something? What can you do? Maybe you can't do a whole plan. Maybe you might just want to look at various opportunities and possibilities for you as the Isle of Palms to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. That's the question that you need to ask after today.
Thank you.
No question.
The context of this item was to look at what work that Charleston's done, because I was on the carbon sinks.
Okay, yeah.
And one of the things,
I thought your name sounded familiar.
yeah, one of the things we talked about there was how do we, they're not just the peninsula, Charleston, how do we get some of the, particularly the coastal around the sinks, because it's all really one ecosystem. So how do we all get aligned? Part of this is how do we align with what Charleston's done? I think what you showed us some examples, things we could.
And you have a fantastic resource here, Belvin, that you really should utilize. He started an organization. He took it over, redeveloped it, and really is doing meaningful work. And the whole process that I mentioned before that he's involved with of getting different communities to pass resolutions. Even if you went and did something where you recognize that climate change is affecting in what you're doing here, greenhouse gas emissions, and we're going to study ways in which we're going to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions. That's a step. That's something you can do. And again, reality is probably the most important thing that you can think of.
I had two quick questions. The ICLEI group that you mentioned, how do you spell ICLEI?
ICLEI. And you can just Google it.
And
It doesn't come up with what ICLEI actually stands for because it's been changed. It's really a government, cities and government for sustainability. So that's what it is. It was originally international something or other.
But one of the benefits is that I'll give you an algorithm to figure out what your emissions are.
Yeah, what they do is, Katie and I went through probably 4 different programs that they have. One, talk about greenhouse gas emissions, then the rest were actually how to use their computer program, which you can bring up on any computer, and put your data in once you get your data. They even have sample letters that you can use to write to Dominion. You know, probably the most difficult thing is getting the data, because you need to remind people over and over again. And then with us, we got stuff from, I'm not being critical, we got stuff from SC&G, and then Dominion took over, and Dominion said, no, that was the wrong stuff. But we found that we had much more accurate information, especially on transportation, than they had with anything they've done in the past for 2002, 2006, or 2010. So our data was more apparent. But ICLEI gives you, they create a program called ClearPath, and ClearPath then allows you to learn how to put your data in. So if we did something, Katie asked me to take a look at what happened in 2020 when everybody was really assigned to their home and come to work. So we could show that we had, I think it was an 18% reduction in electrical usage in city buildings. We saw that. We thought that we would actually see a major increase and we only did Dominion, not Berkeley Electric. We thought we'd see a major increase in residential usage of kilowatt, but it actually went down 1%. And talking to the people at Dominion, that's when they came back and said, Stuart, people are buying, they're replacing all their appliances with energy efficient appliances. When they're redoing their homes, they're doing more insulation in their homes. And when we're building new homes to replace older homes, there's more insulation. So per house, there's less usage. But it was interesting to see that difference. But you could do that as well.
So I guess related to that, this Charleston City Sustainability Officer, they're doing a countywide assessment of emissions. Are they going to break that down by township? I'm just wondering, we would still get a report of what's going on in Isle of Palm because the sustainability officer is already going to be doing. I don't know if you know that answer to that question.
No, I actually serving a little bit as an advisor to this woman, Ariel, who's in that county position. She's still getting data in. She will not be able to get data from geographic because she can only get data from Charleston County. And at one point, Dominion said, no, you can't get that. So I got involved and said, but we got it. So she will get data for Charleston County. She will not get breakdown from Dominion for Isle of Palm, Sutherland's Island, all right, or anything like that. So that how she's going to extract that is going to be difficult. I think she really wants, can she do get the unincorporated part of Charleston County data, because that's the only thing they really would have control of. I don't know if, no, I'm almost positive she asked, can I get data for the Isle of Palms? The answer probably is no.
Would it be helpful if, I mean, say we could get the Isle of Palms data and provide it to her?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Yeah, okay. 'Cause
Yeah. Yeah. If every municipality was able to do that and provide that to her so she could see the difference, that probably would be helpful. Last time I spoke to her was right before the holidays, so left her with some opportunities. She hasn't called since.
The interesting thing about Isle of Palms is when you look at it, probably 90% of the emissions are from cars. So it's just going to exacerbate the tourists coming out to the beach. It's just going to make a bigger argument about cars on the island, parking, the whole thing's just going to, it's just going to make it a hotter,
Well, yeah,
pressure cooker
right.
of an issue of people coming out here with cars, parking cars, running cars and idling cars. It's going to be double emissions.
One of the things that I don't know if anybody has ever, just from observation, how many cars that are coming across the, let's say, either IOP Peninsula or coming from Sullivan's has more than one person in it. I know recently I don't know if it's still running, they tried a bus to the Isle of Palm, and it was.
Yeah, they did the pilot program. They're going to do it again, I think.
Yeah, but they had very poor response because people just don't want to take a bus.
Yeah, that's another.
Which would really help. maybe, not to tell you what to do, but maybe, again, reducing the number of parking spaces would require people to.
That's what I'm saying. This whole thing is,
I know.
it's just gonna heat the pressure cooker up around the parking, cars.
Oh, yeah, oh, definitely.
I mean, the staunch items is great. Keep all the cars off. the road.
Yeah, definitely agree. Yes, ma'am.
I wanted to see if you could tell me a little bit about the leaf blowers and the you were talking about some kind of legislation
Yeah,
for
we actually,
that? Yeah,
city council actually passed a resolution.
a resolution, okay.
The city council passed a resolution that I think it's a year, it might be a year and a half, that the city is going to transfer all their leaf blowers to electric rather than be gasoline.
But that's just the city.
That's the
That's
city,
not all the
not all-
landscapers
No,
who work there.
because the city doesn't think it has the authority to be able to do that. So what it wants to do is be the example and be able to say to the landscapers, this is what we're doing. Can you do? I mean, some of us in this room are old enough to when there were no leaf blowers and people had to give us a break. You know,
It's interesting how you start to look at this stuff and see, like we got the wild habitats, the wildlife development, electricity, development, runoff, development. It's all so inextricably linked.
oh, it is.
It's just one big cycle.
Yeah, keep going.
With the leaf blowers, I think that there are actually some municipalities or states or I'd have to go back and look at the information again, but who've actually passed laws to prohibit the use
Yes.
of these.
Right.
And they did allow a period of time, I think it was about 3 years, to implement that, to give the people who are in the business of landscaping time to kind of come up to par with the electric and the rechargeable. So,
If you go back to the sustainability office and go back to the resilience and sustainability advisory committee meeting minutes, I think you're going to find Katie's presentation, and she put in there a whole list of the cities and states that require that. So someone's already done that homework. There's a limit to what the brain retains, but at least I can point you in the right direction. And if you can't find it and it's not there, Belvin will.
I did that homework. I can do that.
okay, all right, thank you, Kelvin.
Belvin, I forgot.
Yeah.
Again, going back into how complicated this is, like we talked about the littering, right? We have an ordinance for cigarette butts, but we don't enforce it. So you can put an ordinance in for electrical, but if nobody's going to enforce it, why bother having a regulation or why bother having an ordinance?
I would just say it's not that it's not being enforced, is that the littering ordinances are difficult to enforce because they have to be witnessed by the officer before issuing a citation. So if it is witnessed by an officer patrolling the beach or a traffic officer on the road, and he witnessed the littering happening, that's when the citation is able to be used.
Yeah.
To be issued.
Yeah, I'm not being critical of the police, but going out and giving someone a ticket for smoking on the beach, I don't know if that's the highest priority. So we have to be careful what we ask for when we talk about regulation and ordinance, because if you don't have the resources to actually enforce and implement, then you got to question, and this is a big problem we have in the United States overall, because I'm a regulatory compliance expert, If we put ordinances in place, but if there is no way to implement, enforce and implement or get people to adhere to them, then it just becomes a burden. And when we start to lose the importance of rule of law, which is part of the unraveling we're having right now culturally, is we have all these laws, but nobody wants to enforce them. So crime rates are up, things are up. So it's all of this socioeconomic, it's all so complex.
I agree with you as a former superintendent. We try to convince the boards if we don't make rules that we can't enforce. But it's interesting. I use Folly Beach because I'm 2 miles from Folly Beach, and they did the resolution last year to ban smoking on the beach. And I'm there enough. The women and men that ride the beach to just monitor, but can't give out a summons. They usually will stop and say something, but again, they can't enforce it. They can't give a summons. But they've been doing more and more of that, which is really very helpful. So you see less and less people smoking, except, one in the morning, guys smoking a cigar because he can't smoke in his house. But true. But it shouldn't stop you from creating some possible changes in procedures that can move you in that direction. And again, being the example, that's all.
To circle back around, because I don't want to be the negative or what I was going to circle back around and finish with this. I think your can we do it? Or,
Yeah.
can we do it is really important.
Oh, it is.
And not only can we do it, but is it doable?
Yeah, we have, for example, we have one under the building, which I don't think made it, that all new construction should have a 240-volt outlet in the garage so that if anyone wants to put a charging unit for a car in the garage, it's already there, because we know that if it's done under regular construction, it's maybe $150. If you do it after construction, it could be $500-600. So I don't think that made the cut, but we talked about that at great length. But we realized that we didn't have the authority to get that into the construction laws. So
Right.
Thank you so much, Dr. Weinberg. Are there more questions?
Well, I was just going to say one vehicle for pushing different things like that. There's Charleston Rises on the
Thank you.
peninsula. So it's like a more green building code essentially that you can volunteer to get into, and you get certain benefits if you do build your building under those. So it's sort of an incentive program, instead of a requirement program. It could be a good vehicle for all sorts of green building procedures.
Yeah, that was
We
one.
appreciate your coming.
That was one of the challenges we had, thank you, Dr.
Yeah.
Thanks.
On the carbon sinks, when we talked about the idea of reviewing ordinances for current best practice and sustainability, it just fell off. Nobody was interested in it.
yeah, it's true. Yeah,
I kept bringing it up, but nobody wanted it. So
well, good luck.
Thank you.
I know
Thank you.
Belvin he's not gonna let you.
We got Melvin.
Yeah,
We'll be fine.
Thanks, Stuart.
Thank you.
Get a copy of that PowerPoint presentation so that we can post it online. I think it has great information about things that people can be doing.
I have a copy.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you very much. A lot of stuff to cover and very little time left. I'd like to say a few things about this item of old business, discussion of main priorities to pursue identified by the subcommittees. As you know, we've broken into 4 working groups and come up with some ideas. When I met with Desiree and John and Susan Hill Smith, I've learned some more stuff that we didn't know when we first asked that this be done. And some of these suggestions were very helpful. Susan said if we're making a list, we should have one main thing to start with, because we can't just hit the council with dozens of requests. So she said, think of it as put your items in 2 buckets. One, the easy things that are low-hanging fruit that maybe don't even require a council vote, that might be good things to start with. And 2, high level that require more work. If we could, thinking that since we have 10 minutes left, we're in our allotted time, we might want to table that for the next February meeting, if y'all think that's a good idea, and come up with one main one, and we could discuss it next time. I'd just like to know how y'all feel about that. If someone would like to make a motion one way or the other.
I have a question first. Are there suggestions from all 4 of these?
I don't,
Action
I've only
items?
seen 2 groups.
Okay, so that might be another reason for
Right.
tabling our discussion until we
Right.
get
We
more.
seem to have been changing what we were asking for, and I know that makes it more difficult, but,
Mary,
yes.
are you by one item, do you mean each per group or?
Yes,
the
we would
4
have
groups
4
should-
main items, one from
Okay.
each group
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes a lot of sense.
to start with. Because, I mean, we don't have to do everything all at once. This is just the beginning, and we're all trying to figure out how to proceed. But that was what Susan suggested, which I thought made a lot of sense. Melvin.
Is the idea that these items are sort of ready to go, that we give them to council and it's something they could implement or vote on immediately, or are these items that we say we want to work on these?
I'm not sure because we don't really know yet. It depends on what the items are. But as Douglas requested, it's a good idea to have them be something that they could act on.
Right, I guess if we're talking about easy
Measurable.
buckets and harder buckets.
Yeah.
Like, are we trying to present 4 easy? To start out?
Well,
You know,
for
Belvin,
each-
you know, what's interesting is what we did, remember we did in the climate actions is we came up with the list and then we prioritized them.
Right,
And then
right.
then we stack ranked them from top to bottom. And then we went that way. So that could be an approach too, as we come up with the list and then we put them in these 2 buckets and then stack rank them in the buckets.
Perhaps your group that you do first should be related to each other, you know.
I know we didn't really get a chance to talk for the water, but we talked briefly before the meeting and we need to do some research first before we could even come up with objectives, because we don't know if there's water quality maps, what kind of maps are out there, what kind of data is out there. We know that there's drainage and stormwater. So our first task is to really get organized and understand what is the water quality state of data and information. You know, if we can find some information that tells us what the state of degradation or not. So we're starting there. I'm not sure we can even come up with a big objective statement right now. We gotta just understand. Like some of these are ahead, like litter's way ahead. We know the litter issue, right? But
And wildlife is easy.
no litter.
Uh,
So,
Mary, I did have one other question too. There's one item that I had thought about that was as part of the litter and trash and debris group that is really something that I didn't really envision us working on as a committee, but perhaps it could be something where we could charge council to pursue. Because I think it's really, one of the things that he said that kind of struck me, is this something you can really make a difference about? And I'm not really sure we have the power or authority to make a difference about one of our items. But I do think that council does, working in conjunction with Public Works.
I think that's the whole idea, Sandy, that we are
Yeah.
asking council to look at
Right,
this and
yeah.
act on it if
Yeah.
it needs a vote and if council can accomplish it.
Right.
That was why they wanted us to do this, I believe. Isn't that right? That's right.
Yes, that is correct. And I go back to the recommendation that we discussed with the former liaison, Susan, and during our meeting earlier this week is I think that you all can continue to develop a comprehensive list that we can look at, and we can provide guidance to you all to say, okay, this is something that we need to bring before city council for any action. But there might be a lot of low hanging fruit that we can work at an operational, at a departmental level. And we can decide, what might be something that we bring to Public Works for more discussion before it goes to city council. So I think from y'all's perspective, I know that there's a lot of ideas and we certainly want to capture all of those. But from a group's perspective, if you all can agree and prioritize on a major topic by, for each of those subcommittees, for each of those themes, that we need to know that are priority for you all. And then at that point, we can determine, are there any resources that we need to consider, putting together? We are just starting our budgeting process for FY23. So this is a perfect time for you all to develop those priorities, and we can determine, is there any funding that we need to allocate for a study or for some research or for a particular initiative. So certainly this conversation is timely in that sense.
Can I ask a question? So just to take a step back and thinking strategically about developing these objectives, I think one of the main things that I heard Dr. Stewart mentioned during his presentation was the importance of having buy-in and support from the city council, because we can all be very interested and invested in this, but if the council's not, it's not going to go anywhere. And so, obviously they wanted to form this group, or at least some of the members did on the previous council. So I don't know, I'm not too familiar with everybody on the council. I read their positions on different things for the election, but obviously John's here, but I don't know if there's more involvement we need to get from them, or what the overall feeling is of the council members? If there's been discussions that you kind of have a sense, Desiree or John, about where some of these priorities, how they feel sort of in their gut about the environment and the importance of what we're doing, or do we need to get more buy-in, or we're not spinning our wheels, I guess, so to speak?
I mean, I think and I'll let, Councilmember Bogosian answer that from, his perspective as a council member, but I think that there's absolute buy-in from the community and from city council on the importance of having this committee established and involved and supported. How they feel about certain priorities, once they're developed, that's a different conversation, because that will be associated with policy. But they need to know what those priorities are and if there's any specific recommendations from this group. So from I guess a general perspective, I certainly think that there's support, certainly from the staff's perspective as well. And something that I think they're very excited about, and having opportunities for the community to be engaged. But how they feel about specific issues, that we'll know. I don't know. We'll know once they're presented and they have an opportunity to discuss.
Yeah, I'll just echo what Desiree said. There is support. And remember, there's 4 council members that carried over from that created the committee to begin with. So those 4 remaining, there's 4 new, but I can, what I can tell, there's overwhelming support for this group. And I think it's been well received throughout the community as well by the residents. So, but again, that's general support. I think that's why I think it's important to in each of these 4 areas, try to get something that you can bring forward that is achievable. I think, as Dr. Stewart said, you don't want to tackle world hunger necessarily on your first item. I think to get some wins under your belt, get some momentum going is important. So when you try to prioritize things that maybe, are easy, as we said before, low hanging fruit, as you will. But there's going to be support, in general support from the council. I can assure you that.
And what would be our best procedure? We meet monthly, and for a short amount of time, we work through our chair. Could you remind us on the process? Like if there's something tonight, for example, that I would like to bring forward to move forward, what's the process?
Okay, so I guess the recommendation for the next steps on these 4 subcommittees is for you all to discuss amongst yourselves what the priorities are, and come back to the next meeting with a general idea of what your subcommittee wants to present as the major priority. And then we'll get buy-in from the rest of the group before it's finalized. If there's anything specific that you want to discuss, then it needs to be communicated to the chair so that we can make sure that the agenda includes it. Nothing can be discussed or acted on unless it's listed on the agenda.
Okay.
So if there's another speaker or a particular topic that you want to make sure you have an opportunity to talk, make sure you communicate that to Mary Pringle. She will communicate to me and we'll make sure it's included.
Thank you. All right. Do we have a motion to put this off, or
You
can
don't
we
need
just
to have
do
a
that?
motion. You're
Or-
not taking any action. What we'll plan on is including that same action item on your next agenda. And then everybody knows basically what they're assigned to do, coming back with their list of priorities and then a major one that you would want to pursue this year.
Make the old college professor in me coming out, but we've been, since our last meeting 2 months ago, that was our assignment. And I just wondering if we should is the next committee meeting in time enough, or should we ask all the subgroups to have something before the next committee meeting so the rest of us can review it? I mean, I feel
Yeah,
like
we can have-
our subgroup has done that for the last 2 months, so.
Well, it depends on the groups who still need to do research.
Yeah, I mean,
would
I
think.
knew
I
I
don't know
was-
if that's
I mean,
unreasonable to
personally,
ask.
speaking personally, I knew I was going to be challenged with the holidays and moving things down here full time. But I mean, I for the water quality, I mean, I'll lead that to see that we get something together. If we can maybe have a coffee or even just have a conference call or something. That's allowed, right? The three of
Yes,
us-
as long as there's not a quorum. So 3 of you are not a quorum.
So maybe the three of us can either grab a coffee or get on a call.
Do you think you could do that and send us something in the week before?
Yes.
The February 10th
Yes,
meeting?
your long-winded answer to yes, we could get something
Good.
beforehand.
Yeah, and the same can happen for the climate.
That would be.
Maybe February
That'd be
1.
great.
Give everybody a chance to review it.
Yeah, let's pick a date. So the next meeting is the 10th?
10th of February.
February 10th.
The 10th. So if we get the last 2 priorities or list of priorities from the 2 subcommittees, we can also make them available to the rest of the group so that you all have an opportunity to review them, even though you didn't work on them, so that you familiarize yourself with those, and also post them on the website so that people are aware as well. And I guess come prepared. I think the expectation will be for you all to agree on the 4 priorities at their next meeting. So whatever research or homework we all need to do to be prepared to take action at that time, I think that keeps the ball moving.
So we're not talking about the whole long list. We're talking about the number 1 priority from each group.
I think we can provide the whole list so that everybody knows
But
and
make sure that's at the top and.
make sure that
this
your
is
main
the
priorities
one.
listed at the top, and then we'll expect to have some action from the whole group on those 4 main priorities that will be presented to city council in some fashion.
And do we know at this time if anybody's going to invite a speaker to the February meeting?
I wanted to make a suggestion that maybe we go speakerless next time because
I-
we've had speakers at the last 2.
I agree. I think
And
that's
and there's a
excellent. We need more
modification
time.
on that. I'd like to
Yeah.
ask too, that if we plan a
So we won't
speaker
have
in
to rush through the
advance,
business.
maybe we add, if we're allowed to, can we add more time onto those meetings? Or can we put a time limit on the speakers?
Absolutely.
I mean, this was a wonderful speech. The litter was great. We could have sat here for 2 hours. I'm willing to commit an extra half an hour if we're going to have an elongated speaker. But I think what we're going to be challenged with is if we keep cutting into 3/4 of our meetings
Exactly.
every month or every other month, we'll never get anything done.
Yeah, I think that the biggest priority for you all is to start getting some structure behind, what you want to do, what you need support from us in order to do so. So I think that the next agenda should be focused on that.
Good,
Give you
Sounds
all
good.
enough time to discuss that.
good. Well, let's move on to the next agenda item, which is review and consideration of the vision statement that Linda Plunkett has given us. If you have the piece of paper, it is the italicized part saying the Environmental Advisory Committee of the City of the Isle of Palms SC seeks to make the city a coastal leader in environmental best practices by focusing on 4 ecological issues. And then the bullet points under that are reduction and elimination of litter, review and maintenance of high quality of water, protection of the city's habitat and wildlife, advocacy and leadership in climate action to build a sustainable environment. And so I think that, thank you, Linda, for drawing that up. Do we want to discuss that before we vote on it? Or should we? You want us to make a motion and then?
You can make a motion to
Alright.
approve or adopt and then have discussion.
Who would like to make a motion to approve or adopt?
I will make a motion to approve or adopt Sandy Brotherton.
All right, and who would like to second?
I'll second. Debbie
Debbie.
Harris.
All right. Any discussion about changing it or adding on to it, or how do
I'd
y'all
like,
feel?
on the second bullet, review and maintenance of high water quality, I think if we just said, protection of water quality, something along that line, or because review and maintenance doesn't really address taking action or about the quality of water.
All right.
We can even just say high water quality
They're all,
or maintaining high water quality.
probably there's an action word in there.
Yeah, so
So what would be the action word with high quality of water?
let's say maintain,
Maintain high quality of water?
yeah. It's a goal. Does
Yeah,
that work for everybody?
All
I
right,
just see maintenance, I start thinking of drainage ditches.
Maintenance, it should be the noun to match the other bullet points as opposed to a gerundive.
Maintenance, okay, maintenance of, that's fine. Just the way it was written, it was more like review the maintenance of, let's think of drainage ditches. So that
Alright.
works well.
all right,
Thank you.
all right.
Under, let's see, reduction and elimination of litter, could we do litter and waste, just to make it a little bit more comprehensive?
I like that.
I agree.
Nice touch.
Okay.
You can get compost under there if you wanted to.
All right, so we have suggestions to change reduction and elimination of litter and to reduction and elimination of litter and waste. And we have changed review and maintenance of high quality of water to maintenance of high quality water. Is that? Kind of
Do you want to say water quality, maintenance of water quality?
Yeah,
Yeah,
that
maintenance
sounds
of water
better.
quality.
of water quality. All right, we'll change that to maintenance of water quality. All right, I guess we need a motion and.
May I make a comment real quick? Just everybody on this committee may have already done work on a vision statement, a strategic plan before, but it's really good that we're getting down to the nuts and bolts because it's really like a reverse pyramid with a committee or an organization. You start with a mission statement, which was pretty much given to us with the charge of formation of this committee. And the vision statement would be next. So we agree what we're going to work on as a committee. And from there, we branch out like we're going to be doing with our subgroups is to set up goals and measurable aims with metrics. So keep that in mind as we're working through before the next meeting is we want to get a little more specific in each of these 4 areas too. Thank
I
you.
have a comment on the first reduction and elimination of litter and waste instead of elimination management.
I like
That works.
So reduction and management of litter and waste.
You want to say proper management?
Come on, Doug.
Come
Being
on.
partially, so we can go on forever.
Yeah.
I mean, I think we got the intent here. I think this is
Yeah.
very, very good for everybody.
Do we need to make a motion on all of these or can we just
No.
approve it?
Correct. I mean, as
As a group,
amended.
I think so.
Mhm.
I think everybody agrees,
And
no
And
objections.
just to close on one thing too, I think we said we're going to try to come up with our goals and objectives and related by February 1st
February 1st.
and share it with Desiree. And then you'll disseminate it with, okay, great.
Yes,
Just
sir.
want to make sure I'm writing down my action items.
All right,
Thank you.
all right. So did we finish that?
You need a vote. Yeah, we still need a vote
Oh, okay.
as amended.
All
I
right.
second that.
Well, you don't have to, you just, it's amended, so I'm guessing everyone's gonna say their favor of it. All in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed?
Excellent. All right, that concludes the new business. Under miscellaneous business, request for members to submit a 2 to 3 sentence bio for the city's website. Desiree brought this up, that they would like to have everybody look at the resume that you turned in to get onto this committee and try to condense it. I know that's going to be difficult for a lot of you to 2 to 3 sentences. And there might be something that the city sends to the Island Eye as well.
Correct. We want to create sort of an introductory article to introduce this group to the community. So if you can send me a couple sentences that we can use about you, your background and what you're bringing to the group. And this ties into the other item under new business that we want to establish a quarterly public education campaign. And we'll start off with an introduction from you all to the community, and then what our recommendation is that this committee helps us draft or identify an educational topic that we can promote through the ILNI on maybe the 3 or 4 big themes that you all have already identified.
Got a
So
nice
that'll
list
be-
today.
I know, we've done the first one, but just think about that. That's something that we want to do. It won't be until the next quarter. The first one will be, again, your introduction, but that's something that we want to do with this group and give you all an opportunity to provide educational materials to the
Yeah,
community.
Environmental awareness and education is such a critical part because you're dealing with human behavior. If people don't have an a priori understanding of the behavior we want, then they don't know what to do. So
Mhm.
if we can educate and make them aware, that's huge. I think that's a great
And
idea.
the island eye is such a good way to go about it because all the island residents get it, at least most
Correct.
of them do. Do you think we should see which group would like to go first and decide when that
Sure,
article should be turned in?
absolutely.
All right. Anybody want to discuss that?
I'll make a motion for litter and pollution.
Yeah, well,
I think litter and pollution would
It's
be
such- it's
great
just so-
and
it's just
timely.
so-
yeah.
it's
It
just
would
such a
be,
Front and center
Right.
issue.
yeah,
Yeah,
I
I think
agree.
it's a
And
great
it would be in the addition right before spring, when, visitation to our community starts picking up. Although we talked a lot today about how we are no longer having a busy season and slow season. It feels like they're all busy
It's
now.
so busy.
But I think that would be a timely topic
So
for you all to
maybe in
pick.
March for
Mhm.
litter and pollution.
Yeah, beginning of March, first week of March, if we can get something from the group, we can evaluate it and have it out.
And I believe you said it would not have an individual's name on it. It would be from the Environmental Advisory Committee
Correct.
in the paper.
It would be an effort as a group to educate the community.
We'll put your name underneath as a chair.
Yeah, and your cell phone number.
All hate mail goes to Mary.
Yeah. And that she wants to reduce the number of parking spaces.
I was thinking, on the other hand, maybe we want to have a speaker, because we get a lot done in a short period of time when we're crunched.
Well, we left out our main thing that we were going to
Yeah.
discuss. So
That
is there
works.
any other business?
I have a couple of housekeeping questions while we're all together. Is everybody now on IOP.net? Should that be our means of communicating with each other?
I've signed up and then I forgot my password, so now I can't get back on. So I
Okay,
have
so
to-
whoever has not yet been able to log in, send me an email tomorrow and I'll put you in touch with our IT group and they'll call you. I know that they've helped other folks when they were having issues. They'll call you directly and walk you through what you need to do. And if they need to reset your password, they'll do that fairly quickly. So just communicate with me and we'll get that handled.
And in our communications, either as a subgroup or amongst each other in whatever capacity, I always copy our chair. Should we, as a habit, copy you and John
Yeah,
as well? so
that would be
you-
great.
Okay, so you can hit the delete button when you get 1,000 emails a day. That's wonderful. And
I will say though, with that, the definition of a meeting also applies to any communication, either text message or email.
yeah,
So as long as there's not a quorum and you're giving information, not going back and forth on any decision making, that is when it can cross into becoming a meeting that would then need to be advertised. So just be careful and be cognizant of that. Use it for, providing information, not having a back-to-back discussion on any issues.
So just to clarify then, I'm thinking that maybe we should have it just go to Mary, and then if Mary feels the need to send it on to you guys,
No, I think they want to be copied.
you do want to be copied.
Yeah,
Okay.
why don't
okay,
you do
all right,
that
great.
and we can,
So,
yeah.
Yeah,
can
she
you remind me
told
what
me
the form
that.
is? Because if it's 3 of us on a subcommittee and I CC Mary and I CC you and,
We're not part of the committee.
okay, so if we can have 4 people on an email,
Yes.
that's okay? That's
Yes.
our max? Okay, that's my
Yeah.
question. Thanks.
and one other request for John and Desiree and everybody is to work the other way too. I've read a couple of things that have passed recently. I can't give you an example because I can't remember, but about environmental issues. So it would probably be helpful if we could get copied in on things that are discussed that may relate to our work, just so we know what you're doing too.
And that'll be Councilmember Bogosian's role, bringing back to you all information about any issues that council may be discussing or considering so that you're well informed and can help your work here.
Thank you.
Is there any other business to come before the committee? Right, the meeting's adjourned.
Good meeting, Chair.
You.